Hello. Back again for another story, I see. Well, don't worry. As usual, I have one for you. However, for this one, I hope you don't feel frightful or scare easily. That tales from the shadows don't drive you to cling tightly to the blankets over you at night. Our story has many perspectives and things that you need to truly see to understand. And even then, you might find your grasp of reality slipping. So, allow me to open up. Tonight, a night like any other, is filled with countless things across the world. So many people doing so many things. Some people drive to their jobs. Some people are out at the clubs, partying, just trying to have a good time. But as it's night, as the bouquet of options, there are always those who use the darkness for ill intent. These people love the dark. It's so easy to hide in, isn't it? It cloaks your form so that people around can't see. Sneak up on people. Sneak around people. Get away with things that you could never accomplish during the day. The night is full of opportunities for those that are corrupt enough. We begin our story with a group of these individuals, holed up in an abandoned warehouse, once upon a time used for storage for high-scale industrial equipment, now long since abandoned. A group of men sit around in this warehouse, laughing, drinking alcohol, telling jokes. But there's one person in the room who isn't laughing. A young man strapped to a chair, bound with duct tape, so that he can't speak and can't move. Sweat runs down his face and tears right along with them, as his frantic heartbeat races, wondering of all the negative possibilities that could befall him. Fucking A, one of the men exclaims. I mean, seriously, how long does the boss expect us to wait here? We've been here nearly 2 hours with this fucking prick. It would be relaxing if you didn't hear his stupid ass whimpering in the background. Can't even enjoy my fucking beer. Just calm down, man, one of the other men replied. We should be getting a call from the boss about what to do with him. Any time now. Well, I don't fucking like it. Ugh. Just because this prick has a rich daddy who won't pay his tab, we gotta spend our asses all night sitting in some fucking abandoned shack in the middle of fucking nowhere. I don't even know why we bother, even if the guy fucking pays. You know the boss. He's gonna tell us to mincemeat this kid anyways, the man said, as once again, the young man tied to the chair began to whimper, crying through the duct tape on his mouth. Shut the fuck up, the man shouted, as he threw his beer bottle at him, not his head, but hitting him in the chest with it, beer spilling out onto him as the bottle bounced off, clattering to the ground and breaking. Fucking waste of my time. Well, at least be glad that it's a waste of your time, another of the men replied. For all you know, that fucker could show up. What are you talking about? The man replied to his friend. You know, him. The fucking demon, man. Ugh, this shit again, the man said as he replied to his friend, getting up from the crate that he was sitting on. The demon ain't real. He's just a fucking ghost story to scare little fucking pussies like you. No, I'm fucking telling you, he's real. Yeah. Another fucking superhero story. Somebody sweeping in to save poor innocent civilians and lock up the bad guys. It's bullshit. There ain't no demon. Yo man, This guy doesn't lock anyone up. He leaves bodies, not prisoners. I heard that last month, he took out the whole Yamagata syndicate in one fucking go. I heard it was a fucking bloodbath. Just pieces of people everywhere. A little bit of this guy here, a little bit of that guy over there, a little bit of the boss on the ceiling. They say it took longer to put all the right body parts together than it did to actually find out what happened. It was a fucking slaughterhouse. 36 guys. No freaking survivors. Ugh, don't give me that crap. That was another gang hit and you know it. It was probably the Yakuza. They like to make moves like that. Lots of blood. No, I'm telling you, man. It was the fucking demon. There were stacks of money. They didn't touch any of it. No calling cards left. No beefs with other gangs. It was just a slaughter. And it was all done with a fucking sword. You're gonna be reeling about this shit till the day I die, aren't you? You better fucking pray it's not tonight. It's not gonna be tonight, you big puss. Because there ain't no such fucking thing as the demon, the man said. As he did, the lights in the room began to flicker gently. What the hell is this? More power surges. Is the generator going down again? He said as he looked up at the lights, flickering overhead. Look, go check the generator, he exclaimed as he began to look back down towards his friend. And there, under the flickering of those dim factory lights hanging overhead, standing right behind his friend, a tall figure, a mask with a frightful face on it, looking as if it were carved from bone, beading red eyes peering from under it, clothed in solid white, some sort of overjacket, thin and light, with a white shirt, white pants, white shoes, as it stood there, slowly drawing a long sword from a hilt, strung across its back. What the fuck? He exclaimed as he rapidly reached, pulling his gun, and as the light flickered, the figure was gone, as he sat there pointing it into nothing. What the fuck was that? He exclaimed. Guys, tell me you fucking saw that shit. His friend rapidly turned around as his friend was speaking and saw nothing. What are you talking about, man? If you're trying to freak me out, then stop playing. The first man was looking around in all directions, trying to find anyone in the room that wasn't one of his men. I'm not screwing with anybody. I saw something. It was right fucking behind you. This is not funny, man. Please do not toy with me like this, he said, beginning to draw his gun, looking around frantically, just like his friend, as all of the other men did the same, round about 10 of them, as they began to hear a noise, screeching, like the grinding of metal against metal. As they looked around, eyes darting from place to place, finally their eyes falling upon a figure walking across the catwalk, as calmly as if he were taking a stroll through the park in broad day, a long blade grinding against the edge of a steel handrail running the length of the catwalk. As the lights flickered, his location seemed to change, as if he disappeared and reappeared in but the instant it took for the light to flicker, moving feet across the catwalk, as if he were a ghost, an apparition, not really there. As with another flicker of the lights, he was gone altogether. No fucking way. It's him, man. It's the demon. That's fucking him. That's bullshit, the ringleader said. There is no such fucking thing. It's some kind of trick. Are you sure about that? A voice exclaimed as he felt cold steel against his neck, and a shudder of fear crawled up his spine. His eyes glancing back, slowly looking over his shoulder to find that terrifying figure standing behind him, breathing over his shoulder, the blade pressed firmly against his neck. He didn't hear anything, not until he was right there, not until he had a blade against his throat. He stood there shaking as he slowly lowered the gun. Look, whatever this is about, I'm sure we can talk it out, right? I mean, my boss has got pull. He can make things happen. He can he? The man standing behind him replied, as all of his friends pointed their guns in his direction. Don't you fucking shoot! Hold it! The ringleader exclaimed, holding out one of his hands. Look, be reasonable here. You don't want any trouble. We can make this simple. In the moment, one of the others looked like they got a bright idea, their eyes widening just a bit as their gaze drifted towards the individual strapped to the chair, rushing up to him and pointing a gun at his head. Look, you crazy fuck. Let him go, or I blow a hole in this guy's head, he said, the gun in his hand shaking somewhat as he stared at him. But the man with the blade didn't flinch, not even an inch. He didn't even seem to stop doing what he was doing, reaching one of his hands up, placing it on top of the man's head, tapping his fingers across the top of his skull. Didn't you fucking hear me? I'll blow this guy away if you don't let him go. The figure's eyes finally drifted away from the man he held at blade point, falling to the individual holding the gun at the hostage. Oh, you think I'm here for him? You seem to be under a misconception. A misconception? The guy said, still holding the gun, his hand trembling a bit. Yes, you believe that I'm here to save that man. But truth be told, he's no more innocent than you are. If you could see what I could see, you'd know that his hands are stained with just as much blood. Actually, his count is higher than most of the people in this room. He's no better than any of you. So really, all we have is murderers and thieves, kidnapping and holding for ransom other murderers and thieves. So, there's really no one here to save. And besides the point, I'm not really the save people kind of guy. You see, far more than saving the innocent, I prefer to punish the guilty. This world is overrun with filth like you. No respect for anything but what you can take from others. Saving the innocent, well, that's just catching a fumbled ball. It's trying to fix the problem after letting the problem run amok. I have a much more effective means of dealing with issues, the individual said, as his beady red eyes stared out at the group. The most frightening thing was that his mask seemed to move as he spoke, not as if it were a mask, as if that were actually his face, as if the terrifying visage upon it were the face he were born with, the mouth opening as he spoke, the terrifying teeth that seemed razor sharp, opening and closing as the words billowed out. Oh, and there's also one more problem with your little plan. What the fuck are you talking about? The guy said, his hand now shaking more intensely. Well, the terrifying figure replied, it's just that it's kind of difficult to kill anyone when you don't have hands. What are you? And before he could utter another syllable, the lights flickered once more, and as they did, there was a spray of blood. The man whose throat he was holding the blade to suddenly found his head popped off, twirling into the air above as his throat and neck, or the stub of it, spewed out gouts of blood. Not only that, but the individual holding the guns on the hostage suddenly found both his hands no longer attached to his body. In a sudden outburst of pain, he attempted to scream, only to find a blade protruded through his chest, gouting blood, as suddenly the men around began to open fire. As they did, the entire room became a bloodbath. The figure moved around, slashing to pieces one figure after the other, in the flickering light, seeming to move in ways that weren't possible, darting between locations that seemed impossible to get to within the amount of time he was allotted between the light being on and off. One individual, instead of being slashed to bits, was grasped by the head and with a single streaking motion, hoisted off of the ground, the figure taking a few steps with the man's head in his grasp, heading towards a steel pillar that held up the ceiling for this factory, and in a single sweeping motion, slamming his head into it so hard that it shattered, the abundant matter inside of it splattering everywhere, fragments of skull clattering to the ground, as the body did as well. Finally, only two figures remained. Having large assault weapons nearby, they dropped their handhelds, picking up the assault weapons and unleashing a torrent of bullets that streaked through the figure and the hostage, riddling the hostage with holes, sending him scattering to the floor as well, as they unloaded at the figure heading for them, now much slower than he was when he was first moving about the room, this time almost seeming to take his time with it, dragging his blade along the surface of the ground, tearing into the cement floor. As they shot, bullets riddled the figure, walking in their direction, ripping through his body. As they did, the bullets sent his jacket flying back, whipping backwards as if it were lifted by a breeze, when in actuality it was being lifted by the thrust of countless bullets, tearing holes in all of the fabric. But still the individual continued to walk forward. It was a bright and moonlit night, the figure began to announce, and on that night I felt a fright, something that I couldn't see, I felt was creeping up on me. Whenever I did turn to see, nothing was ever there but me. I stand alone this moonlit night, so why is it that I feel this fright? The figure exclaimed as the red glow in its eyes intensified. The bullets that passed through the figure, not slowing it, not phasing it, and not only that, the bullet holes themselves seeming to evaporate away, fading into non-existence, as if they never happened at all, his clothes going back to perfect, without the slightest abrasion, scuff, or tear. There was no blood, no pain. He only continued to walk forward, still saying those terrifying words. It was at that point I realized the source of my impending fright. Perhaps the frightful thing I fear is the man that I see in the mirror, he said as he came right into the face of one of the individuals, now so terrified he couldn't even move, dropping the gun to his feet, having emptied every round in it, to no effect or salvation. The terrifying figure opened its mouth. As it did, a cold breath slipped from it, like ice that washed over the man's face, like it froze the very air. And as it finally closed, there was a flash of movement, as the figure now held the sword at an angle, somewhat up and away from him, blood dripping across the blade as the man's body flew apart, splatters of blood streaking about, scattering across the clean white suit and mask, only to seem to be absorbed into its form, but without staining it whatsoever. There was only one left now. He, too, was too scared. He wanted to run, to flee and hope for life, but with this figure, whose beaming red eyes now fell on him, it felt as if he couldn't, as if his legs were made of iron, unable to flee, the terror too great, as the figure began to approach, breathing out that ice-cold breath that seemed to create a fog as it made its way towards him. And then suddenly, there was a beeping, like an alarm going off. The terrifying figure stopped for a moment, beginning to raise his left arm, pulling back his sleeve. There was a digital watch. Ah, what a pity. Looks like my time's up. Well, I don't know if you're lucky or not, but at least you don't have to deal with me anymore, right? The terrifying figure exclaimed as he clicked the stopwatch button on his wristwatch, and the beeping ceased. Suddenly, there was a small pulse of wind that seemed to rush out from his location, kicking his jacket up somewhat as he began to sheath the blade on his back. As he did, the mask he wore on his face seemed to begin to evaporate, dissipating into a cloud of frozen mist like fog, the color of his suit changing from the pale, ghostly white that it was before, and then changing from being a jacket at all, shrinking, dissipating, and changing, the clothing he wore seeming to morph. The figure, once having ghostly white hair, now altering so that the hair was more of a brownish color, perhaps sandy blonde. His clothes changed to what one might believe are average street attire. A simple but plain-looking leather jacket, a t-shirt from a popular band, loose-fitting jeans, and a pair of Western-style boots, as the individual opened their eyes to find that they seemed quite normal, no different from the average person's, as he blinked several times, looking at the man in front of him, so terrified that he didn't know what to do with himself. "What the?" the man exclaimed as he began to look about at his surroundings, blood and body parts everywhere. "Oh, crap. Not again. Why in the hell do I keep popping up after him? That freaking asshole. He always leaves me with one of these fucking messes, and I just have to deal with it. I hate that guy." "What the fuck are you?" the terrified man said, as he looked at this new, not-so-terrifying figure in front of him, in utter astonishment and still terror, unsure of what this meant. "Me? My name's Kantuki, and you are one lucky prick. Judging by the looks of things, my brother Spectre was the last one up, and you hit the changeover just in time. Congratulations, you get to live. So long as you don't do anything stupid. I don't care what you do. I don't really care that you're a not-shit criminal. It's none of my business. I have better things to bother with," he said as he took a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, lighting one up and beginning to walk towards the exit to the factory, doing his best to step over the blood and gore surrounding him. "Freaking mess. I'm gonna have to wash my boots, I know it," he said as he began to exit, as suddenly the ring of a gunshot echoed in the room. as the bullet struck him directly in the back, before a tiny tapping sound, the sound of a flattened bullet falling out of his shirt and jacket and clattering to the floor with a few small tinks, as Kantuki turned around, taking a long drag of his cigarette, exhaling a large cloud of smoke before removing the cigarette from his mouth. "You know, that was a really bad fucking idea," he said calmly, as he pointed 2 fingers at him with his thumb upwards, like his hand was a gun, and, with a quick lowering of his thumb, "Bang!" Kantuki exclaimed, as the man was suddenly struck with something, a flash of red flying out of the back of his head, as blood leaked from a hole in his forehead, his body clattering to the ground. Fucking ain't shit criminals. Why are they so stupid? I guess it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go get a beer. And not any of the shitty beers I see sitting around here. I want something with some punch to it. I bet the Silver Dog's open," Kantuki said as he exited the factory, leaving the blood and gore behind for what he hoped was a better time. This man is the center of our story. Name, Kantuki. Age, well over 800. And his life story is one that most would probably have trouble believing.